The sound behind the closed door began on a quiet Sunday afternoon in the Pichai household, the kind of afternoon when the world outside felt like it was moving slower, but inside something was stirring. Sundar was in his study, going through notes for an upcoming meeting with Elon Musk about a joint tech initiative. He had no idea that in the far corner of his home, a story was beginning that would change how he saw his own family and himself. He first noticed it as a faint melody, drifting down the hallway. At first, he thought it was a playlist from one of the kids' devices. But then he heard it again, soft, hesitant notes, like someone was searching for the right keys, followed by a pause, and then another gentle attempt. He frowned. His son, Arav, had never been interested in music. Sundar had tried to get him into it when he was younger, but Arav had refused. He preferred coding games, watching robotics videos, or kicking a ball in the backyard. So who was playing the piano now? And why did it sound so emotional? He got up and followed the sound. As he reached the living room, he realized it wasn't coming from the main piano there, the one they used when guests came over. It was coming from the small, upright piano tucked into the corner of the staff quarters hallway. A piano that hadn't been touched in years. Sundar paused at the door. It was slightly open, and he could see Arav sitting on the bench. Next to him sat someone unexpected, their maid, Anaya. She was leaning slightly toward him, her hands hovering over the keys, guiding him in the most delicate way, as if she were passing down a secret. "No, Arav," she whispered softly. "Listen to the sound first, then let your fingers follow. Music isn't about getting it right, it's about feeling what's in here." She tapped her chest gently. Av nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He played the phrase again, and this time the notes connected in a way that made Sundar's throat tighten. There was something haunting in that short sequence, as if each note carried a piece of someone's hidden story. Sundar almost stepped in, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Anaya's eyes softened when Arav got it right. Maybe it was the way Arav seemed to trust her completely. He leaned against the wall, unseen, listening. "But why are you teaching me?" Arav asked quietly after a few minutes. "You could get in trouble if Papa finds out you're not doing your work." Anaya smiled faintly, and there was a shadow in that smile. "Because when I was your age, someone taught me, and it saved her." The words lingered in Sundar's mind. He'd known Anaya for years, but she had always been quiet, respectful, and focused on her duties. She rarely talked about her personal life. "You're really good," Arav said shyly. "Better than YouTube," she chuckled. "Thank you." But music is not just about being good. It's about speaking when words can't. One day you'll understand. As Sundar stood there, he realized something. Arav wasn't just learning to press keys. He was learning to feel. And somehow, Anaya was the one guiding him into that world. But a sudden sound broke the moment. The front door opened, and the house filled with voices. It was Elon Musk. Sundar had almost forgotten. They'd planned an informal meeting at his home before tomorrow's big presentation. Elon's booming laugh echoed down the hall. "Sundar, I hope you're ready, because I brought something that's going to blow your mind." Sundar turned away from the door where Arav and Anaya sat, forcing himself to walk toward the living room to greet his guest Dot as he shook Elon's hand. His mind was still half in that little room with the piano. He didn't know why, but something told him that whatever was happening in there was more important than anything they were about to discuss. Dot, and he was right, because by the end of the week, Elon Musk himself would be sitting at that same piano. And what he would do next would shock everyone, especially Anaya. Asterisk, the song she never finished at. Rest of the afternoon unfolded with the usual hospitality that Sundar extended to high-profile visitors. But his mind kept drifting back to that narrow hallway, the little upright piano, and the quiet determination in Anaya's voice. Elon was animated, his conversation bouncing from electric vehicles to space exploration, throwing in jokes about artificial intelligence as if they were casual conversation topics. Arav came out once to greet Elon politely, then disappeared. Again, claiming he had homework, though Sundar now suspected exactly where he'd gone. Sundar found himself distracted. He nodded in all the right places while Elon explained his newest concept for integrating autonomous systems into deep space missions. But his thoughts kept circling back. How did Anaya know the piano so well? Why did she talk about it as if it had once saved her? And more importantly, why did Arav seem so deeply drawn to her lessons? After Elon finally left, promising to return tomorrow for the big meeting, Sundar walked back toward the staff hallway. The door to the piano room was closed now. He stood there, listening. Silence. No music, no voices. Just the soft ticking of a clock somewhere down the corridor. He pushed the door open. The piano was uncovered, its keys slightly worn but surprisingly clean. On the stand was a faded piece of sheet music. Sundar stepped closer and saw that it wasn't printed. It had been handwritten, the notes curling across the page in careful strokes. At the top, in a script that was elegant but slightly uneven, were the words, "For Ma, the day you left." His hand lingered on the edge of the paper. There was something deeply personal about the way the ink had faded unevenly, as though it had been touched too many times. He imagined a young girl somewhere, sitting at another piano, pouring her feelings into this very melody. A voice behind him made him turn sharply. "Sir, I didn't hear you come in." Anaya stood in the doorway, her hands clasped in front. Of her usually calm face had a flicker of unease. "I was just..." Sundar gestured toward the paper. "This is yours, isn't it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. It's something I wrote a long time ago." "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "But you never finished it, did you?" Her eyes flicked to the sheet, and for a moment he thought he saw tears gathering. "No, some songs are not meant to be finished." She stepped forward, gently taking the music and folding it. "Sometimes life interrupts." She didn't explain further, but Sundar noticed the way her fingers lingered over the folded paper, almost protectively. Before he could ask more, Arav burst into the room, holding a small notebook. "Papa, guess what? I can play the first part of her song. She says it's called 'The Day You Left.'" His excitement filled the room. But Sundar noticed the quick glance Anaya gave him, as if silently asking him not to press further dot instead. Sundar smiled at his son. "That's wonderful, Beta. Maybe you'll play it for me soon." But that night, Sundar couldn't stop thinking about it. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what story lay behind that unfinished melody. Who had left? Why had it mattered so much to her? And how had she managed to hide such a talent for so long in a house where music was rarely played? The next morning, the house buzzed with quiet anticipation. The meeting with Elon was set for the late afternoon, but Sundar woke early and wandered into the kitchen. He found Anaya there, making tea, her movements precise and quiet. "Anaya," he said gently, "I want you to know. Whatever your story is, you can trust me." She didn't meet his eyes. "Some stories, sir, are safer when they remain in the heart." But before he could respond, Arav came in, hair messy, eyes bright. "Papa, can I show you something before your meeting?" Sundar followed him to the little piano. Arav sat and played, haltingly at first, then with surprising fluidity, the opening of the song. The melody was raw, almost aching, as if it carried too much weight for such a young player. When he finished, Sundar clapped softly. "That was beautiful, Arav." "It's not done yet," Arav said with a grin. "She's going to teach me the rest." Anaya stood silently by the wall, her expression unreadable. But what none of them knew was that by the end of the day, Elon Musk would hear that same unfinished melody, and his reaction would change the entire course of what was about to happen. Because Elon knew this song dot, and he knew exactly whose story it told. Asterisk. Echoes from another life of afternoon sunlight spilled lazily through the tall glass windows, casting warm golden streaks across the marble floor. Sundar's home, usually calm before a meeting, carried an undercurrent of anticipation. Arav's piano practice had filled the morning, each note a small victory, each mistake followed by an encouraging whisper from Anaya. But Sundar noticed Something unusual. The closer it came to the time of Elon's visit, the quieter Anaya became. Her voice softened, her movements slowed, and her eyes seemed to linger on things as though they were pieces of a memory she couldn't quite put. Away dot by the time the doorbell rang, Sundar had convinced himself he was imagining it. He greeted Elon with a smile, ushering him inside. Elon, always larger than life, carried a leather-bound folder under one arm and a mischievous glint in his eyes. "I hope you've got coffee," he said. "I'm going to blow your mind twice. Today, once with my idea, and once with what I want you to hear." Asterisk, they settled into the living room, exchanging quick updates about the upcoming tech event, their mutual projects, and a few friendly jabs about whose innovations would actually change the world first. It was during a lull in the conversation that Arav came in, shyly holding the sheet music Anaya had given him to practice. "Papa," he asked softly, "can I play something for you and—" "For Mr. Musk?" Elon chuckled. "You play?" "Well, that's a surprise. Go ahead, champ." Arav sat at the small, upright piano in the corner, his feet barely touching the floor, and began to play. The first notes were hesitant, but soon the melody began to take shape. It carried that same raw beauty Sundar had felt yesterday, a kind of sweetness tinged with sorrow. Each phrase seemed to pull something invisible from the air, a memory, a longing, a wound that hadn't fully healed. Elon's smile faded. His head tilted slightly, his eyes narrowing, as if he were trying to place a face in a crowded room. The deeper Arav went into the melody, the more still Elon became. He wasn't just listening, he was remembering dot by the time the final note faded. The room felt heavier somehow, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Elon leaned forward, his voice low. "Where did you learn that song?" Arav looked. At Sundar, uncertain, then pointed toward the hallway. "She taught me," he said simply. Elon's gaze followed his finger, and a moment later, Anaya appeared, standing hesitantly near the doorway. Her posture was tense, her hands clasped in front of her as though she were bracing for something. Elon rose slowly, studying her face. You can't be," he stopped, running a hand over his mouth, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "I haven't heard that song in over 20 years. The room went utterly silent. Sundar looked from Elon to Anaya, confusion swirling in his chest. "How do you know this song?" Elon's voice had changed, softer now, but edged with something almost like urgency. Anaya's eyes dropped to the floor. "Because I wrote it?" she said quietly. Elon stared at her, stunned. "You wrote it? That's impossible." "The only person who could have written that song." His voice trailed off, and he shook his head as though trying to dispel a ghost. "Was someone I lost a long time ago." Sundar's breath caught. He could feel the story shifting, moving toward something much larger than a hidden talent. "Who?" he asked, his voice low. Elon single quotes, S eyes remained locked on Anaya. "My sister." And in that single sentence, the room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in with the weight of all the questions that suddenly demanded answers. Asterisk, the truth she buried for a long moment. No one moved. The quiet in the room was the kind that made every small sound louder. The ticking of the wall clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall, the soft, uneven breathing of Arav, who stood frozen between the three adults, sensing that something important had just been uncovered, but not yet understanding what it meant. Anaya's fingers tightened together, her knuckles pale. Sundar's eyes flicked between her and Elon, trying to process the claim that had just shattered the air. "My sister. Elon took a step closer, his voice low but trembling in a way Sundar had never heard from him before. "Your name." It was different then, wasn't it? Anaya hesitated, her lips parting as though to deny it, but then she exhaled slowly. "It was Ilara." Elon closed his eyes briefly, almost as if the name itself had the power to take him back 2 decades. When he opened them again, there was a sharpness in his gaze. "Ilara Musk, you were 16 the night you disappeared. We searched for months. He broke off, swallowing hard, his usually uncheckable confidence slipping away. Sundar stepped. In his voice gentle but steady. Anaya, is this true? She nodded once, slowly, as though each movement carried the weight of years she had tried to leave behind. It is, but the girl you're talking about, she's gone. I am not her. Anymore? Elon's expression hardened. You can't just erase yourself from the people who loved you. What happened to you? Why didn't you come back? For the first time since he had met her, Sundar saw Anaya's composure crack. She sat down the edge of the piano bench, her shoulders curling inward, as if the act of carrying her own story was physically exhausting. The night I left, she began slowly, was not planned. Something happened, something I couldn't undo. There was a fight in the house, not just words, but real anger. I felt like I didn't belong anymore, not even in my own family. I ran. I thought it would be for a night, maybe two. But life? Outside was not what I imagined. It swallowed me whole. She paused, her eyes fixed on a single ivory key of the piano. Music was the only thing that kept me from falling apart completely. But when you are alone, with no name that keeps you safe, you have to build a new one. So I became Anaya. I learned to live quietly. I thought, if I stayed hidden, no one could be hurt again. Elon's jaw tightened. We thought you were dead. Do you understand what that did to us? To me? Arav's small voice broken unexpectedly. But if you were family, why didn't you tell us before? Anaya's eyes softened at the boy. Because, Arav, sometimes telling the truth means opening doors you've kept locked for years. And once they're open, you can't control what comes through. Sundar's mind was a storm. He had trusted Anaya in his home with his son, without ever suspecting she was carrying an entire other life behind her silence. And now, Elon, a man known for controlling every variable he could, was standing in his living room, confronting a sister who had chosen to vanish from his. The room felt smaller, the walls almost pressing in. Elon finally spoke again. His tone no longer just wounded, but urgent. I can't lose you again. You're coming with me after today. We'll talk, we'll figure it out, but you're not disappearing again. Not now. Anaya shook her head slowly. It's not that simple. There are things you don't know. Elon, things that would make you wish I had stayed gone. Her words hung in the air like a warning, but before Elon could press her, the sound of the front gate buzzer startled them. A security guard's voice crackled over the intercom. Sir, there's a man here. Says he's here for Anaya. The look on her face in that instant, pure fear, told Sundar that whoever was at that gate was not just part of her past. He was the reason she had been hiding for all these years. Asterisk the man at the gate, Aaron. The room seemed to thicken as the guard's words echoed through the intercom. A man, here for Anaya. Sundar felt the change instantly, the way her face drained of color, her hands instinctively clutching the side of the piano as if it were the only thing holding her up. Elon, still processing the shock of finding his sister alive, now turned sharply toward her. Who? His voice was clipped, direct. Who is it? Anaya didn't answer immediately. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting toward the front of the house as though expecting the walls themselves to dissolve and expose her. Sundar walked toward the intercom and pressed the button. What's his name? The guard's voice came back, slightly muffled. He says his name is Rafiq. Anaya flinched. It was small, almost imperceptible, but Sundar caught it. Elon caught it too. Anaya, Sundar said softly. You know him? She closed her eyes. Yes, but you shouldn't let him in. Elon stepped closer. Why? Who is he to you? He's someone from the years I was gone, she murmured. And if he's here, it means those years have finally caught up with me. Her words sent a ripple of unease through the room. Sundar glanced at Arav, who was watching with wide, worried eyes. Arav bade her go upstairs for now. The boy hesitated, looking between them, but finally obeyed. His footsteps retreating up the stairs, the three adults stood in a tense triangle. Elon's expression had hardened again, his protective instinct kicking in. If he's a threat, we'll deal with it. But I'm not letting him just stand at the gate. I need to see this man's face. Before Anaya could protest, Sundar signaled the guard to open the gate. The minutes that followed felt stretched. The distant hum of the driveway security sensors sounded, then the soft, measured steps of someone approaching. And then he appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that was too formal for the warm afternoon, his face carrying the kind of calm that felt calculated rather than natural. He stopped just inside the doorway, his eyes scanning the room until they found her. Ilara, he said. The name rolled off his tongue like it had been waiting for years to be spoken again. Elon's jaw tightened. Her name is Anaya now. The man smiled faintly, as if amused by the correction. To you, maybe, but not to me. Anaya's voice was barely above a whisper. What do you want, Rafiq? He took a slow step forward. You left something unfinished when you disappeared. I've come to collect on it. Sundar could feel the shift in Elon beside him, the quiet, controlled fury. You're going to explain what that means now. Rafiq's eyes moved too. Elon studying him with an expression that seemed to weigh how much to reveal. This isn't your business, Mr. Musk. It's hers. She knows what she owes. I don't owe you anything, Anaya said suddenly, her voice sharper, stronger. That life is over. I told you years ago. You told me nothing, he interrupted, his tone smooth but carrying an edge of steel. He ran, and running doesn't erase a debt. Sundar stepped forward, placing himself subtly between Rafiq and Anaya. If you've come here to threaten someone under my roof, you've made a mistake. You can talk, but you will do it with respect. Rafiq's gaze lingered on Sundar for a long moment, and then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Very well. But you might want to hear this before you decide which side you're on. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. Elon's hands clenched at his sides, ready to move if needed. Rafiq slowly pulled out a worn envelope and placed it on the piano, directly in front of Anaya. Open it, he said. And then decide whether you still think the past can't touch you. Her hands hovered over it, trembling. Sundar and Elon both leaned in slightly. Their eyes fixed on her. Anaya slowly slid a finger under the flap, pulling out a single photograph. And the moment she saw it, her face went white. She swayed slightly, catching herself on the edge of the bench. Her voice broke as she whispered, No, this can't be. Sundar caught a glimpse of the image, and what he saw made his stomach drop, because the photograph was not of the past. It was of a AV taken yesterday. Asterisk the last note for a moment. No one breathed. The photograph lay between them on the polished piano top, the edges slightly curled, the image sharp and undeniable. Arav, in his school uniform, his bag flung casually over one shoulder, walking out of the gate yesterday afternoon. The angle was wrong for an innocent snapshot. It had been taken from a distance, through the bars, the way someone watching without permission might capture a target. Elon's voice cut through the thick silence. Low and dangerous. You've been following her and my nephew? Rafiq's gaze flicked to Elon, then to Sundar, calm but with something darker behind his eyes. I follow what matters to me. She matters, and now, apparently, so does your boy. You think she's been honest with you? She hasn't told you why she left, what she left behind, or why she's been living under another name. You deserve the truth. Anaya's voice trembled, but it held a defiance that seemed born of years of running. The truth you want to tell is only half of it. You want them to hear your version so you can make me small again? But I will not be small. Not anymore. Sundar moved subtly closer to her, his eyes locked on Rafiq. You have 30 seconds to explain what you want, or you leave this house. Rafiq's lips curved in a thin smile. What I want is closure. Years ago, Alara and I worked together. Not in a way most people would understand. We moved things. Not always legal, not always safe. And she was the best at what she did. Until one night, she walked away with something that wasn't hers. Something valuable enough that people got hurt trying to get it back. I lost everything that night, and now I found her. Elon's fist tightened. And you think that justifies threatening her or taking pictures of a child? Threat? Rafik said smoothly. I call it leverage. That single word was enough to make the temperature in the room drop. Sundar stepped in front of Anaya fully now, his stance deliberate. If you think my son is leverage, you've already crossed the line you can't come back from. I don't care what your story is. You leave, now. Rafik's eyes met Sundar's, and for the first time, something flickered there. Calculation. He seemed to weigh his options, the set of his jaw tightening. Anaya's voice broke the standoff. I still have it, she said quietly. Both men turned to her. You what? Elon asked. She reached for the folded sheet music still resting near the keys. I kept it hidden inside this. She opened the cover, and between the thin pages, a small flash drive slid out. Rafik's eyes lit up. After all these years. You wanted it so badly, Anaya said, her voice steady now. But you never understood. This isn't just data. It's the recordings, every song, every piece we wrote together. You wanted to sell them. I wanted to finish them. So I ran. Elon looked at her, the weight of her words settling on him. You've been carrying this all these years. She nodded, because music was the only thing that was mine. The only part of me that wasn't broken by the life I left. Rafik reached forward, but Sundar's hand shot out, stopping him cold. You're not taking anything from this house. And if I see you near my family again, you'll wish you hadn't stepped through my door. There was a long, tense pause. Finally, Rafik exhaled through his nose, a faint, bitter smirk tugging at his mouth. Maybe you've won this round, but music doesn't erase debt. And with that, he turned and walked out, the sound of the gate clicking shut behind him, a small but unmistakable relief dot for a long while. The three of them stood in silence. Then Anaya turned to Sundar, her eyes glistening. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want Arav to see me as anything, but the person who taught him music. Sundar shook his head. He will see you as someone who protected what mattered, even when it cost you everything. Elon stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone anymore. If you want to finish that song, we'll finish it together. That night, the little upright piano became the center of the house. Anaya sat at the bench, Arav on her right, Elon on her left. Sundar watched from the doorway as the first notes of the day you left filled the air again. But this time, the melody didn't stop where it always had. She kept going, her fingers finding the notes she had once been too afraid to write. The room felt lighter with each chord, as if every measure carried away a piece of the years she had hidden. When the last note finally rang out, no one spoke. They didn't need to. The song had told the story of loss, of survival, of finding a way back in a language only they understood, and somewhere deep inside. Sundar knew that Arav would never forget the lesson hidden in those keys. That music, like love, was sometimes the only thing that could carry you home. Asterisk.